mean, come on, man, you know the thing. Who else is a more patriotic American than these fine folks? I mean, other than maybe Colonel Sanders, because his chicken is tinger flicking good. Or finger sticking good. I mean, come on, man, you know the thing. They're definitely better than that Bernie Sanders guy. Can you believe I beat that guy in an election? I am Joe Biden, Bo Jiden. As the President of America, I just want to say Jim Jar are cool cats. I am Joe Biden, Bo Jiden. I mean, come on, man, you know the thing. Anyways, I gotta go. I have to go to deliver some tanks or something to that President Zelensky guy. Peace out, hooliganies.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. It is me again. I know y'all gotta be tired of seeing my face by now. Good to see you, Warren, in the comment section. What is up, you guys? Today I've got Sherry on today. We're gonna be talking about a couple of different things. I know she wants to talk about the agricultural stuff a little bit. We've got a video with Dennis Kucinich on the banking collapse. I've got a PDF that I'm going to be sharing with you guys at some point today with her when she talks about it on the American Economic Review. So excited to be learning about what that's going to be. And then we have a video from Jeffrey Sachs on the doomsday approaching. So the doomsday approaching video and the banking collapse video are pretty long, both in themselves. So we'll just be watching those today and talking through that videos and stuff. So I'm just waiting for Sherry to get here. I think she's just getting ready, and then she'll be here soon. So yeah. What have I been doing? So yesterday I heard that No Man's Sky had a new update, and so I decided to hop on to No Man's Sky, which is an outer space explorer video game. What's up, Ghost Star and Brandy? Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. It's one of those kind of games, just like an open world, infinite amount of planets and galaxies and stuff to explore. They had a new update, and they had supposedly had all this really cool new stuff that was supposed to be coming into the video game. And so I went to play it yesterday. I was watching some YouTube videos trying to figure out how to get to these areas and see the new stuff. And man, they were even saying in the videos that it's really rare to find these planets and you just got to keep looking. And man, I spent an hour in the galaxy map, which the map is when you open up the map, it's outer space, and there's just planets all over the place. It's literally looking at the night sky with the stars and stuff, but all the stars are 3D. They're in your face and stuff. They're coming at you because they're all in different areas in the sky. And so I'm for an hour just hopping from planet from galaxy to galaxy to galaxy to see if it's the right one for a freaking hour yesterday, and I couldn't find it. So I got over it. I did not do that. I just did a couple of random little fun quest things in the game, side stuff to make some extra special money in there, and then that's all I did. And I think I stayed up really late last night playing some Fortnite or something, waiting for my husband to come home from work. So that's all I did yesterday, trying to check out the new, because Warren and them were like, check out the new No Man's Sky game. It's got all these cool new updates. And I was like, fuck yeah, I want to go get that shit. I want to see it. I want to see what it is. I want to check it all out. And I couldn't find it. So maybe at some point today I might turn it back on and see if I could try to find it again, because No Man's Sky is great. It's just once you've done everything, there's nothing really much to do except for, continuously just do the same thing and continually gather up money and stuff that you don't need and stuff like that. So when they add new little things into the game, it's always really fun because it's new stuff. So yeah. And the game never ends. So it's like you never have to delete it. You just keep it on your system forever. You don't play it for a couple of months and all of a sudden a new, update comes on and you're just like, oh yeah, this game again. Let's go play it. So it was fun though. It was all right. It was interesting. As usual, I was by myself playing video games like always, but that's the life. So, all right, cool. So Miss Sherry is down in the back room. Ooh, the back room's scary. Sherry is down there. So I'm going to bring her up and we're going to start watching these videos and stuff because these videos are like 40 minutes long each. So good morning or afternoon, Sherry.
Hello. How are you, Jimmy?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
You having a good Friday?
It's just started. I'm still West Coast, so it's like only 1 o'clock for me. I woke up like maybe an hour and a half ago.
Well, I'm getting a little better. Mine's getting better. But
good. How's your day going?
Yeah, I've been sick the last couple of days, but I am getting better. So
Oh no.
yeah, I had some kind of norovirus or something, so it's not been pleasant.
That sucks. Man, the kids in my house have been like, they've got stuffy nose and they keep coughing. And I've been giving like one of them Tums because she just been throwing up stomach acid. I don't know what's going around right now, but it seems like people are getting something.
Yeah. It sounds like apparently I was looking, apparently this year's really bad for norovirus for some reason. I don't know.
Go figure.
But
Go figure.
no.
So it's like, it's Good Friday today. Am I correct? Do you celebrate that? No, I don't know anything about it. So I'm like, what's Good Friday? Is that like some kind of Christian Catholic thing? I have no idea.
It is I think it's the day that Jesus died and then he came back on Easter. I think that's how it is. So
okay, that makes sense. That's not really nice. You're like, Lord, Son of God dies, and you call it Good Friday. That's.
I guess he was going back home, but didn't stay for too long.
I love how religion always flips things that are so violent and cruel into something so beautiful. They're like, it's Good Friday, but your guy got like nailed to a cross, bro.
I saw a meme that said, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't say it, but
no, go for it. Go for it.
Oh, it was a funny meme. It was a picture of the Rock and somebody else. And it was just a meme. So it wasn't really them saying it, but he said, Jesus died for our sins.
Yeah.
And this person said he was a carpenter. He couldn't pull a nail. Uh-oh. Hope we don't get nailed for that. I mean, I hope we don't get
no, that's perfect. I hope we don't get nailed for that. Oh, that's so funny. I saw a meme recently online too. And it's Jesus, and he's, in his robe or whatever, and he's sitting with 3 little kids on his lap. And it says, oh, look, it's a man in a dress telling stories to children. I swear that the things that atheists can come up with to make fun of religion is probably even better than the irony of the religion itself.
Probably so.
Well, happy Good Friday.
Well, now that I got us into all kinds of trouble.
Right, right. That's all right. Man, good for I never grew up Christian, but or grew up Catholic, but I grew up Christian. So we did the whole Easter thing and all of that. And it was always weird to me when you'd have to go to church on like some random special holiday to drink the blood of Christ and eat of his skin. And it's always like the little cracker and some like cranberry juice. And it was just the worst thing ever. And I just always remember as a kid, because when you're a kid, your imagination can run. So you're really thinking like they atoned this with like the flesh of Jesus. And so as a kid, when I was eating it and I was like, man, I'm eating Jesus Christ right now, and he tastes really bad. Like, this is not good,
Not a good advertisement.
Right. There was just certain things like that when it came to like holidays and stuff that it never made sense to me. And definitely drinking of his blood and the flesh thing. Oh God. And then there was one time when I was probably about 12 or 13 where I was able to help prepare the plates, like the big, silver plates with the little cups on them for all the, the little drinks and stuff. So people can take their little cup and then when it's time, they sip it for the blood and stuff. And I remember like setting all the cups on the plate and stuff. And I always thought that like God magically just had his blood and crackers on a plate for us the next morning when it was time. I thought it was just this godly thing. And so when I started doing that, I was like, wow, there's actually people that do this. Like, this isn't like magical or, godly or what I always thought it was. It's just some kind of like weird ritual, like a spell or something that these people are doing. It was so weird to me. So.
I grew up, my parents actually never took us to church. We never went to church. My dad was a workaholic, and I think my mom was just overwhelmed with everything. So we never went to church. So I really didn't have any kind of a religious background.
Oh, so lucky.
Yeah, I guess I was because, I grew up kind of confused about what I knew. What I believed. Over time, I just came to realize I just don't believe.
Yeah.
It's never been part of my life, and I've never felt that I missed it really.
Yeah.
So, um,
No, it's good. You got really lucky because you're able to see things through your own perspective and learn from other people's mistakes and see like, okay, I'm glad I didn't learn that and have to deal with that. Because like growing up Christian, I know I'm super not I'm anti all of that now, but there's still certain things that happen in this world that make me think like, oh God, like is it real? Like I always, and it sucks because I know that, God isn't real and stuff, but there's always things in the back of my head or things that happen that make me question it. And I hate that. And I feel like that kind of feels kind of like a trauma because I was raised with it for 18 years. So it's kind of just embedded in me to where like, even stupid stuff where when Trump was president and his son-in-law, Ivanka's husband, Jared Kushner, was his son-in-law, and he had the leader of Israel would come and stay the night at his house and stuff. And now, he's a part of the presidency and working for the president. I legit thought that he was the Antichrist. I literally thought that he was going to bring on the second coming of God for probably a good 3 or 4 months there. I was seriously scared. And I'm like, Jimmy, come on. It's literally a loser who's dating Trump's daughter. Like, it's not the Antichrist, It's crazy.
Yeah.
That stuff, it just sticks in your head and it's almost like a trauma response.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are traumatized by religion. I know a lot of people get a lot of sustenance and, strength from it.
Yeah.
But, there are a lot of people who are also traumatized. And of course, we know that there's a lot of war waged in the name of religion. So for myself, I'm kind of just happy I never really
yeah
had to deal with that.
Yeah, you're lucky. And that's what I did with my kids, like because I like you said, the good parts of it, like there are really if you take away all the bad stuff of Christianity, there are good lessons in there, at least for children, keeping yourself young until you're proper, that whole, when I looked as a child, I looked through child's eyes. And then when I grew up, I put the child things aside and lived as a grown up, like, certain lessons and life lessons, don't worry about the finger you're pointing at the other person, worry about the three pointing back at you, stop worrying about the stick in somebody else's eye when you have a log in your own, like a couple of life lessons here and there. So with my kids, like, I allowed them to, when they were growing up, like as little ones, I allowed them to go to church sometimes with my mom on Sundays, because my mom still vehemently goes to church, like rigorously goes to church. And so I would let them go to church with them, but then I would remind them before and after, like, remember, this is just religion. You don't need to believe that this is one God. Even God said himself, do not believe other gods before me. So that means there isn't just one God. That means God even acknowledges that there's other gods. So if you want to believe in God, don't believe that this is the right one. Just learn the lessons that come with it. They're really good lessons of life lessons. And that's why I allowed them to do that. But I always reminded them, of like, there's more than just this one. And there is nothing to as well. So
yeah, and the Sermon on the Mount is just, that's just a beautiful piece of literature, and so it's something that certainly we can all live with and live by,
Right.
And so I've always that I've always found to be a really beautiful thing, and inspirational, and
Definitely.
whether or not you're religious, it's certainly something to live by. So
yeah, definitely. Okay, now I'm done talking about religion because I fucking hate religion. So all right, so before we get started, I wanted to show off something really funny I saw today. I mean, I kind of feel bad for the business owner, but this is something that I have probably done about 100 times in my life, and I did not realize that this could happen until I saw the video today. So be prepared to be a little bit shocked, but be prepared to have a good laugh, because I was shocked knowing that this could happen, but it was really funny. Okay. So I guess this weekend at some point, there was a video footage of a laundromat, and this guy accidentally put his cigarette lighter into the dryer. So the video footage shows the dryer exploding. So let's take a look and watch this. Thank goodness nothing happened to this guy, though. That's what I was like, oh gosh, he got out just in time. Oh, kitty. Look at that.
oh my God.
Right? From a cigarette lighter. That is just from a lighter.
God.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know how many times I have accidentally put a lighter into, that's stuck in my pocket that I just didn't think about, and I wash and dry my clothes, never even thought twice about this actually happening. Woo! Scared the poo-poo out of me. I was like, okay, well, I guess I might as well start checking on my pockets from now on, because I don't go to a laundromat. My dryer is in my house. Like, that's scary.
Yeah, you wonder how many houses have burned down because of stuff like that. So.
Right. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Like, how many houses have blown up like that, and people just thought, it was from something else, not from the maybe the dryer exploding or something, but not from the lighter being in the dryer. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Jeez. All right, so let's get started on the videos. Do we want to start with the Doomsday one or the banking Dennis Kucinich one?
Dennis Kucinich? Oh, you mean Jeffrey Sachs?
Oh, I thought you also wanted to talk about the banking collapse with Dennis Kucinich.
Oh, no. I was talking about, okay. You know what? But we could. Why don't we go ahead and do that? Yeah, that'd be fine. But I also wanted to talk about the healthcare stuff. Okay. But let's go ahead and do the Dennis Kucinich thing.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Let me pull it up. All right, so this is Michael Hudson joins Dennis Kucinich with Dave Kelly hosting to discuss the recent banking pressures. They step through the financialization of housing with Dennis taking them inside the process, the influence that leads to the current predicament. Okay, that's it. All right, here we go.
As Dennis was just saying, though, the wealth is being redistributed upward by turning everyone into a debtor to a creditor class. They collect the rentier income, as you describe in all your books, Michael. And if they ever want to foreclose, they can take everything. I mean, BlackRock today has, $10 trillion of assets, and they're buying up homes. So are we going to become basically a renter society where we're basically indentured servants?
Well, BlackRock began by buying up homes of the 8 or 9 million people that Obama evicted from their houses by breaking his promise to write down the junk mortgage loans to realistic market prices. And instead of writing down the loans, he invited his bankers and campaign contributors to the White House and said, "I'm the only guy protecting you from the mob with the pitchforks," namely mainly the Black and Hispanic populations that had voted for him. And so he left the bad loans on the book, evicted the families. Their properties were bought up largely by absentee landlord, private capital firms, and by BlackRock and companies like that.
Well, let's back up a little bit on that, Michael, because as chairman of the Domestic Policy Subcommittee during in the wake of the subprime meltdown, what we found out is that banks were going into neighborhoods in the African American community, and with no doc, low doc loans that enable people to get a better home, in some cases the home of their dreams, without giving people a fair chance to see if they could actually afford it. And then, of course, they booked those loans and then they bundled them into collateralized debt obligations. And then, furthermore, Wall Street turned that into derivatives, pyramided the market, the thing collapses. There's a call on the loans, people can't pay, defaults are going on all over the country. Cleveland was the epicenter of the subprime meltdown, especially in the Black community. And all of a sudden, the wealth that people had embedded in their homes, they lost them. Whole neighborhoods were laid waste. They were stripped of their value in terms of pipes and copper and anything that ghouls could carry away. Then came scavengers who went into the neighborhoods, bought the homes at the shells at a rock bottom, made some minor repairs to and flipped them to create another opportunity and still more victims. So what's happened is the financial community and the financialization of our economy, focusing on where the wealth that most Americans have in their homes, has been able to suck that money out and financialize it, turning the whole country and Wall Street into one great casino. And as a result, going back to the point you're making, the wealth of the country is just accelerating upwards, and the government has basically let this happen. The government, when it picks winners and losers, it sided with Wall Street against the people of the country.
But Dennis, they were able to collect their fees, and their shareholders did well, and so did the executives. You're being a little petty, I think.
Yeah, right. Well,
because the American people you represent got.
I mean, that's a really good point. He just proved right there, or just said right there, history shows that when it came to choosing between the side of Wall Street and the rest of us, history ended up choosing Wall Street and siding with them, especially the government. So I loved that little history lesson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is one of the things that they got into this in that series, The Con by Patrick Lavelle and Eric. I'm sorry, I can't remember his last name. But that is such a good documentary. So I certainly recommend for people to watch that if they get a chance, because they talked about just the different ways that people were taken advantage of. And some of them were even things that you wouldn't think would be possible. People that actually owned their homes getting screwed over and had no recourse. It's just horrifying. And, people died as a result of that. It's just horrifying.
I know.
So, I mean, we don't think about it, but this is the way that, the government does, as he said, pick winners and losers. And unfortunately, we have a Federal Reserve that is very pro Wall Street. And so the winners they pick are the wealthy.
Yep. I agree.
Screwed. Who cares?
Well, that was one of the issues in the hearings that we had investigating the subprime meltdown. The issues of compensation, of whether the public was misled, investors were misled. There was, and no one wanted to take responsibility. Ultimately, I mean, they said they did, but they didn't really want to take legal responsibility. Whether it was AIG, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Lehman Brothers, that whole sordid situation went on. The government looked the other way. The Fed looked the other way. They were supposed to be monitoring lending practices, and the American people. Homeowners just took it right in the neck And in terms of the black community, the wealth of African Americans around the country just crashed during this period.
Well, that's exactly what happened. And if you just pointed out, not only the black Americans, but for 13 years, the entire economy has been polarizing. And the growth in wealth, there's been a huge inflation, the largest inflation in American history. And it hasn't been price inflation. It hasn't been consumer price inflation. It's asset price inflation for stocks and bonds and real estate. And the government says, well, look at how much richer Americans are getting. They can afford, their homes are worth more and more and more. But all of this home pricing has been financed by debt. And so the homeowners who are taking out mortgages to buy the homes own a smaller and smaller and smaller proportion of their home in equity. It's almost all debt. Well, the question is, why did the Fed end all of this? Here you have the economy's polarizing, great for the political campaign contributors. Why did it end it? Well, it ended it because Federal Reserve Chairman Powell said there's a problem. 2 million Americans have to lose their job in order to create enough unemployment so that wage levels are not going to go up and they will not rise in keeping with the inflation of oil prices and home prices and food prices that result from America's sanctions against Russia that have raised prices all over the world and from the monopoly pricing. So the Fed said we have to raise the interest rates in order to bring on a recession, lower wage levels. And it didn't seem to have occurred to him that you're not only going to lower wage rates, but when interest rates go up, bond prices go down. And
would you explain,
stock
Michael,
prices go
one
down.
second. Would you explain the two major points you just made? And one was about monopoly prices. And the fact is that there was corporate gouging of profits from monopolies was one of the key, and also the supply chain problems that occurred because of the Ukraine war. Okay, and explain how those are actually a larger factor, and they're doing it on the back of American workers. They're going to, quote, stem this problem on the back of American workers by driving up inflation. I thought Elizabeth Warren was very good in hearings actually last week on that.
Well, she was attacking the monopolists. Let's look at food prices, where you can all follow when you go to the store. The food prices for eggs and other crops are going way up, but the farmers aren't getting more. The dairy farmers are going out of business. The chicken farmers are going out of business. There are a couple of monopolies for the food distribution business, and these monopolies have simply taken a much larger chunk of the prices that they supply to the stores. And right across the board, the pharmaceutical companies have a monopoly, and they say, we're going to raise the prices for our drugs because we anticipate there's going to be an inflation. And right down the line for almost every kind of product that is a monopoly, the monopolist said, well, the Fed says there's going to be an inflation. We're going to raise our prices now. And the prices have been risen without any of their costs rising just because they can do it.
Look at the compounding issues here. So President Biden makes the decision to pour over $140 billion plus into this enterprise trying to overthrow Russia. That, of course, and the blowing up of Nord Stream pipeline set the stage for a sharp increase in energy prices, which also set the stage for a sharp increase in food prices apart. Okay. And then you go to the monopoly factors that are working in the economy. And that's why people end up paying so much for eggs and bread and everything else, because there's a compounded thing. You raise another point. It's a long-standing canard of the Fed that a certain amount of unemployment is necessary for the proper functioning of the economy. Well, that's easy for the people in Wall Street to say. But tell that to Main Street, where people are struggling, to put gas in the car, to pay their mortgage, to feed their families. And so there's kind of a destructive undermining of Main Street once more in the way that a street hollows out before it collapses. But the hollowing out of the equity, as you mentioned, that people have in their homes, the hollowing out of savings, the hollowing out of pensions, all of this sets the stage for a financial collapse. And the money that was pumped in during the COVID period actually belied the fact that people were just, then were desperate. And now, as that period seems to be over, they're going to be more desperate. As a matter of fact, as we're speaking, the government's getting ready to cut in half the food benefits that people had with the supplementary nutrition benefits. Yep. So people won't be able to have the food they needed. Meanwhile, back on Wall Street, you screw up the management of a bank. You don't have proper accounting standards. You have inadequate due diligence. You have a lack of regs. There's changes in the law. The Fed's going policies that are working against the country. And Main Street gets hit once again. I really think that we have the preconditions here for a political revolt in this country.
I want to introduce something, Dennis. You wrote a 696-page book called The Division of Light and Power, which occurred when you basically saved the Cleveland municipal light system from its corporate competitor, which basically used what is now seen as illegal means to buy it out and destroy any competition. By the way, this competitor recently has put $60 million into bribing Ohio officials. That's a whole other matter. You stood up against them because you did not take any PAC money from these groups. Can you explain to me, and I'd like both of you to comment on this, is this contagion and this reluctance of Congress to deal with this issues of the banks and the incredibly dark influence of dark money going to spread? Is the bank contagion going to spread, Michael? And how much worse is going to have to get, Dennis, before people recognize the utility bills, all the debt they are incurring will cause a debt deflation as the middle class evaporates and doesn't buy products?
I want to comment on what Dennis just was saying, because I want to follow up the logic. He pointed out that the savings were being eroded by workers, not only their own savings, but that of their pension funds. Because when you wind down interest rates, pension funds had corporations set aside a given amount of money, or states and municipalities to set aside a given amount to pay the workers. And they almost all assumed that they were going to be able to make 8.5% a year. But now that interest rates went down to about 0.2% on government bonds, all of the pensions in this country were pushed into deficit. So who is going to rescue them? Well, you've just seen the Fed rescue uninsured bank depositors, saying no wealthy bank depositor will, even though they're not insured, no one will lose a penny. But the pension funds are going to lose as much as they have. The savers are going to lose, and by the way, the student debtors are going to have to pay their debts. The only debts that do not have to be paid are the debts owed by the wealthiest 1 to 10%. The rest of the 99% have to pay their debts. I think that's what Dennis was pointing to.
And thank you for mentioning that, because what you have here is a clear example of the socialization of risk that goes on, and this is where capitalism, the underlying challenge to the system of capitalism, is that there's a number of myths that support it. And one of the myths is that we all benefit from competition.
Good night, Cape Socialist. Thanks for stopping by.
That people are on their own to go up and down by their own merits. Well, we have a massive moral hazard here that's been visited upon the country. And it needs to be addressed directly, lest the country itself fail. And, there are deeper issues here that have to do with monetary policy itself. Most people are not aware that in 1913, the money supply of America was privatized with the passage of the Federal Reserve Act. It's not a coincidence that the government created almost simultaneously the federal income tax, so that instead of government issuing the money to meet the needs of the country, government started borrowing money from banks. So the government goes into debt. Our whole system's been turned upside down by and the corollary today is regulatory capture. You have all these agencies that cannot enforce the law because they're held captive by these financial interests, either through the executive branch or the legislative branch. And David, to answer your question directly, Citizens United case, Buckley versus Vallejo, the idea of
speech now.
We're right now in an era where we're seeing that the door was open for the corporatization of the entire government, and because these corporations essentially have a hammerlock on government policy, because they can pour unlimited amounts of money through these dark money packs into campaigns and totally upend the political fortunes of those who are either executing the laws or making them.
Well, Dennis, you just said
they're pretty much just telling us what we already know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we actually covered this video before, but there's so much in this video that it's unbelievable, because it covers so many different things when you think about it. Antitrust,
Right.
which we've talked about already, and we know that antitrust is something that those laws are still on the books. We just haven't been enforcing them really since the late 70s. That came about because, multiple issues, but one of the primary reasons is because Robert Bork and his similarly thinking, fellows, it basically, influenced the policymakers into thinking that we should look at antitrust in a different way. And it turns out the way that they've influenced the way they have pushed antitrust policy is really to just not regulate it, not implement it, and also not so we've allowed these big companies to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it comes about through merger activity. Companies have to notify the government that we want to buy this other company. The Federal Trade Commission or the Department of Justice is supposed to review these mergers. They're not supposed to allow mergers that would, shrink competition, but they do. And they do using a rationale developed by Robert Bork and Milton Friedman and those guys at the University of Chicago, but also other places as well. And then we have the issue of student debt. We have an issue of monetary policy, which is really just run for the benefit of the large banks, which, you know, really they're the ones that they kind of they have the largest influence in the New York Federal Reserve, which is the largest of the Federal Reserve banks. There's 12 of them. The New York one is really the one that, you know, carries the most weight. And, you know, so it's Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan that are, you know, dictating a lot of these policies. Blackstone now too. And, you know, a lot of this all comes down to campaign finance, because basically we have a system of legalized bribery, and it's led to all these problems. So
Yep. You're right. And, you know, I just recently saw a new merger as well. I think like T-Mobile just bought out Mint Mobile. It seems like now these people are like creating companies just to be able to sell them to these monopoly companies to bank out on a quick scheme, like cash out scheme.
Yep.
Because that seemed like there was money in there. Like that was actually Mint Mobile. People were actually doing really good. You weren't having to pay as much. It was really, really cheap. And now they just sold it. Now he sold it. And it was a celebrity that owned it, I believe.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. That's what's crazy to me. It's like now they're just doing it for like a quick cash out now.
Yeah. And it's the banks that are behind this, because they're the ones that are funding these buyouts. They make a lot of money on these mergers and acquisitions. And the thing of it is the way mergers and acquisitions are done, you know, it's always for one thing, only the banks can actually fund these things. And the way they fund them, basically it allows these investment banks to they're allowed to buy their own stock, you know, they're allowed to basically give this like sell the initial stock offering to their best clients. And so, you know, people like you and me, we don't have a chance of getting in on an IPO, you know. And that's where the money's made, in the IPO. And so, you know, it's just all a rigged game. It's just all a rigged game. It's just so sad.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So tell me about the Jeffrey Sachs doomsday approaching.
Yeah. Well, this one is depressing on a completely different level.
I'm here for it.
Okay. Well, Jeffrey Sachs is an economist, and I think he's a really great economist. He is a very, very policy-oriented economist, and he's done a lot of work in the Soviet Union. In the former Soviet Union. So he's done a lot of work with Russia. He's done a lot of work with various other countries that were part of the Soviet Union, and he has watched the process of the expansion of NATO. What happened was, when the Soviet Union fell in, I can't remember, 89, I guess it was, the United States made a promise to Gorbachev that we would not expand NATO. The reason why this was such a concern for the Soviet Union is that, you know, the Soviet Union had been invaded by Germany in the past, and they were terrified that that it could happen again, if not Germany, some other country. So when I'm not justifying it or anything, I'm just explaining it. When the Soviet Union was formed, what they were doing was they were building kind of a barrier against the West to protect the mainland of Russia. And so what happened, though, was over the years, we continued to expand the Soviet Union. We continued to expand NATO, one country at a time. And so, we, brought Latvia and Lithuania and, all these different countries into NATO. And so basically, we've now gotten to the point where it was just really Ukraine and Belarus that had been formerly part of the Soviet Union and are now, freestanding countries without an alliance to NATO. But what has happened is the United States has, along with NATO, has been pushing and pushing to try to get Ukraine to be part of NATO. Well, for the Soviet Union, I'm sorry, I keep saying that. For Russia, this has really been the red flag, and Putin has made this known for years. Well, in 2014, we sponsored a color revolution that overthrew the Yanukovych government. And so we ended up, in the Yanukovych government, it was more friendly with Russia. So what happened was we ended up enabling a government that was more friendly to the West, to NATO and everything. And it also encouraged, there's also internal issues with a group that is basically a Nazi group that was that is been highly influenced by a man who's no longer with us. His name is Stephen Banderas. And Stephen Banderas was it was a Nazi. He collaborated with the Nazis. And so this was in the western part of Ukraine. Well, the eastern part of Ukraine is there's a lot of ethnic Russians living there. And so what has happened is we continued to push and push and push. And then over a year ago, we had Russia invade because basically since 2014, there have been a lot of atrocities being committed by the people in the west of Ukraine against the people in the east of Ukraine. And so Russia invaded basically to try to stop those atrocities. And so but what has happened is the United States has really, and NATO has really kind of made this into a war that's not really it's not really war. And now I'm sorry, I can't think of the name, but it's
like a proxy war.
Proxy war, that's it. I'm sorry. It's become a proxy war between NATO and Russia. So it continues to escalate. And Jeffrey Sachs, who has been involved with this part of the world for 30 years, pretty much his entire career, he's seeing what's going on. And so he's very concerned about the state of things. And so he has been putting out videos. And I would recommend that anybody who has a chance to go look up Jeffrey Sachs's YouTube page. He has a lot of videos where he's talking about this. So what he starts out talking about is that the nuclear clock was moved 10 seconds closer to midnight, meaning that we're now at 90 seconds to midnight, very close to a potential nuclear war.
Right.
So that's what this video is.
Yep. Now, really quick, obviously everybody in the audience already knows, but when you were when you were saying that the West was pushing Ukraine, not like we were pushing them to do anything, what was happening is we were pushing east, right? So we had already, there were, some alliances of NATO of the west of the east, but then we just kept adding another eastern country and kept going eastern even more, all the way up until the border of Russia, which is Ukraine. And now recently too, what is it? Switzerland, or what is the country called that just joined NATO?
Finland.
Finland, yes. And we looked it up on the map the other day. Finland is right on the border of Russia, like right above Ukraine. So we're just getting that whole border right there.
Yep.
And if you, like all other independent media people say as well, just imagine if Russia was doing the same thing. What if they already had everybody in South America was part of their BRICS alliance, and then they added Mexico, and then they started adding Canada, and then maybe they wanted to add Hawaii because Hawaii doesn't really like us anyway. How would we feel about that?
Right.
But people don't want to see that part. So we just
Right.
keep, like you said, now we're 90 seconds to midnight. And what are we going to do about it? So, all right, here we go. Here, Finland is where you buy fins. You guys are crazy.
It's managed by world experts who are sound judges of where we stand. And we are at the brink of a disaster. The disaster is because our global politics is failing miserably, first and foremost with the United States, which is a major provocateur of this war and a major threat to the peace, to be blunt. We need a different foreign policy in the United States. Of course, we need a different foreign policy in Russia and Ukraine and of the major powers. And this has to be a foreign policy to get us off this reckless war between Russia and NATO, which is escalating by the day, because the doomsday clock moved 10 seconds closer to midnight at the same time that the United States and Germany agreed to send new highly advanced tanks to Ukraine in a guaranteed reckless escalation that brings us closer to nuclear war. And the belligerents in this, which start with Russia and the United States, are not even talking right now with each other, which is an absolute disgrace. It's worse than 5-year-old children. The idea that you don't even have a discussion between President Biden and President Putin for more than a year, just public posturing, reckless statements about each other without even a phone call. It's worse than 5-year-olds. And I give a huge amount of responsibility for this horrible situation to the US government over many years. The reason is this conflict goes back actually more than 30 years to 1990, when President Gorbachev, who I had the honor to help support as an economic advisor to his economic team, unilaterally disbanded the Warsaw Pact military alliance of the Soviet Union. Unilaterally. And when he did it, he received solemn assurances by Germany and the United States that NATO would not fill the vacuum with US-led military bases and alliances. And the United States lied. Not for the first time, by the way. Because as soon as the military alliance of the Soviet Union was disbanded, the neoconservatives in the United States, that is the military-industrial complex and its supporters, began to plot the eastward movement of NATO. And this started already in 1992. And then in the mid-1990s, after President Clinton had told further lies to President Yeltsin, who I also had the honor to help advise, NATO began its enlargement.
Yep.
First to 3 Central European countries, Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia, which became Czech Republic and Slovakia. And from then on, the United States has been pursuing its unipolar agenda of moving American bases, weaponry, missile systems, ADM systems further eastward, with the idea in part of surrounding Russia. And this was laid out by Zbigniew Brzezinski in 1997 in his book, The Global Chessboard, where he talked about the geographical pivots, especially the role of Ukraine, as absolutely central stakes in the battle for hegemony between the US and Russia. In 2004, NATO expanded to 7 more countries, including the Baltic states, Romania, Bulgaria, Slovenia, and Slovakia. And then in 2008, George Bush Jr. insisted that NATO would move to Ukraine and to Georgia. And President Putin at the time and in the year before had made absolutely clear that is the ultimate red line for us. And it was in this context also we should recall that the United States had unilaterally abandoned the ABM treaty and started placing missiles in Eastern Europe. And so in 2008, President Putin already told Bush that this was leading to conflict and that Russia would take Crimea if the US persisted in its move. Then please understand that in 2010, 11, 12, 13, Ukraine tried to walk a delicate balancing act between the United States pressures and Russia. President Yanukovych called for neutrality, which is what he understood rightly to be necessary to save Ukraine from the disaster that it's in right now. The United States could not abide by neutrality. And so the United States contributed to the violent overthrow of Yanukovych in February 2014. We say it's the Maidan Revolution, a spontaneous uprising, but the United States at the most senior levels was involved in that, quote, spontaneous uprising. including the then Assistant Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland, who is now the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, and who has been involved in manipulating Ukraine's politics for a decade. She is the inside neocon in the State Department. So this war started, by the way, February 2014, not February 2022. It's a lie that it started February 2022. It started with the overthrow of a government trying to maintain neutrality. And the United States helped put in power extreme nationalists in Ukraine who broke the neutrality policy, demanded NATO membership as soon as possible, and welcomed billions of dollars of arms shipments from the United States starting in 2014. So this war, going into its 9th year, came from a direct collision between two nuclear superpowers. How stupid is this? I can't even use polite language because the people in the United States government that have provoked this, these neoconservatives who have been in power for more than 30 years, are putting the entire world in danger. And of course, the media is completely dominated by the US and UK, English language media, I should say. And it tells one story, the bravado US-led narrative.
Yep.
It doesn't tell any of the facts, gives none of the background. And by the way, the United States learned its tricks from Britain, which has certainly been the most violent country in history over the last 2.5 centuries, fighting in almost every place in the world. Now Britain can't manage anything. It can't even keep its clinics open anymore, but it still loves war as long as it's someone else's war. So Britain is the great propagandist of this war. And the English media tell the story. Putin invaded, no reason, no provocation, February 2022. It's all Russia's evil without any background at all. And without the most basic point, which is that this was completely avoidable and preventable if the United States neoconservatives had not been pushing a dangerous agenda for 30 years and putting all of us in peril.
Mm-hmm.
It's disgusting. But what's disgusting, by the way, is that they are not even grown up enough to get on a phone call together to say, how do we avoid disaster? This to me is inexcusable. Even 5-year-olds talk with each other after they have the fight in the playground. But there's no talk. It's just hate language every day. And we hear the hate language coming from Ukraine's government. We hear the hate language coming from the UK especially. They're the masters of this kind of Russophobia. We hear the hate language in the United States, and we have no negotiations going on right now. And then we hear the Secretary General of NATO as if he's just quoting George Orwell, but he means it seriously. He say, weapons are peace. No, Mr. Stoltenberg, weapons are not peace. Negotiations are peace. Shame on you for saying that weapons are peace.
That's
We're
crazy.
grown-ups. Talk like grown-ups.
This guy is fire. I just have to say, this guy is so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. He's really very concerned about this. He's, he's, like I said, he also works with China a lot, but he's been involved with this right from the start of the end of the Cold War. And one of the things I just want to bring up, in a way, the United States, especially people of the older generations like mine, the baby boomers, we are like, we are just so we're sitting ducks for this kind of talk. For the talk about hating Russia, because we grew up with the Cold War. We grew up with the duck and cover kind of thing, always worrying about, will we die in a nuclear bomb? This is something that, in a sense, the baby boom generation is really like primed to believe bad things about Russia, just because of the way we were brought up. And I'm not saying that people do it consciously; they don't. But we've had this stuff like pumped into us for so many years, and that's part of the reason why it was so easy to get people to fall into the belief about, to go along with the whole discussion about Russiagate, that Trump was being influenced by Russia, when then there's never any evidence of that, and they never proved anything. And so, but the Russiagate narrative also primed the American people, even those not of the baby boom generation. Russiagate narrative also primed the American people for this, mental, antagonism that we now have with Russia.
Right. Yep, I completely agree. Yeah, what's up, Ed Heller? Good to see you. He says 10 viewers while doors on. That's pretty good. That's because they're all thinking they found the wrong Jimmy. They typed in Jimmy in the search engine and found my video first, and so they're just stopping by here before they find the real Jimmy. That's all they're doing.
We want to stay alive. We don't want a nuclear war. We don't trust you. Because if you want trust, then talk to the other side. Understand politics. Understand, like Clausewitz knew 2 centuries ago, war is a continuation of politics with other means. It means that politics in the normal sense was not pursued properly. So that politics now is by killing people and destroying Ukraine. Politics is to separate the 2 superpowers, to stop the neoconservative illusion of a unipolar US world. We don't want a hegemon, whether it's the US or any other country. We want a multipolar world. We don't want a world of military alliances that's going to get us into World War III the same way that it got us into World War I, and we've never gotten out of that. Stop these divisions of the world between our side and your side and talk with each other. And especially keep the military powers away from each other. Because the President of the United States should be the first to say NATO will not enlarge to Ukraine. We don't want these 2 superpowers accidentally or deliberately entering into complete Armageddon. Think of the United States, how it would be if Russia made military bases in Mexico. We'd say, oh, sure, no problem. That's Mexico's right. Hardly. We'd invade the next day. But the neocons don't have principles. They just have the idea of power. So, well, Russia's not going to do it. We're going to do it. But this is what is bringing us 90 seconds to midnight, for God's sake. So what do we need to do? We need for negotiations to start immediately. I don't know where most of Europe's leaders are. They just have their head completely in the sand, or the US tells them what to do. There are a few that have spoken clearly and publicly, but then the US beats them down. But President Macron has said repeatedly, stop this provocation because we need to respect the security interests of Russia as well as Ukraine. Prime Minister Orban of Hungary has been very clear on this point. But most of the European leaders just follow the US line. And so we don't hear from Europe, and Brussels even more so. It's just a war party. There's no diplomacy anymore. But for the rest of the world, and there are people all over the world listening in, please have your governments call for negotiations immediately. And the negotiations are not between Ukraine and Russia. This is a war between the United States and Russia. It's being fought by Ukrainians who are trapped in the middle of this disaster, by leaders who somehow were told by the United States, oh, be with us, we'll keep you safe, just like the US kept the Vietnamese safe, just like the US kept the Afghanis safe. Come on. This is time for honesty and being grown up.
Him bringing up Vietnam is like a whole nother hit piece. I've been watching a lot of Vietnam videos recently, and like what the movie Apocalypse Now was made after, all that, just like, oh my gosh, like I knew that Vietnam was bad, like it was bad, but I've been learning a little bit more, and yeah, it reminds me, like, us bullying somebody and using them for proxy wars. It does remind me of a lot of that,
It is exactly like it.
Yeah.
There was a line that I guess some military person made at some point in time during the Vietnam War, and I'm not sure if it was the My Lai massacre or what, but I think it might have been the My Lai massacre, where someone said we had to destroy the village to save it. Yeah. And that's exactly what they're doing to Ukraine, destroying it to save it. Really? Yeah. I mean, this is insane. And by the way, guess what? The Vietnam War was also initiated under false premises. The Gulf of Tonkin, as was the Iraq War, as was the war in Kuwait. All these things, they lie to us to get us into this stuff. And, and then, people glom on to these beliefs.
Yep.
Years later, it comes out. But, we're living this now. We should have we should be able to remember these things. And like you said, this stuff goes, we should be able to remember that in 2014, there was a color revolution.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. The
and-
color revolution. Yep. Ukraine on Fire talks about that.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it was Victoria Nuland, who is now the Undersecretary of State for Foreign Policy, I believe. She was the one who was really like kind of the one in charge of that color revolution that happened in 2014. She actually determined who was going to be the leader of Ukraine in a conversation where that was recorded, where she was basically saying, yeah, we got to get this guy. I can't remember what his last name was, but she called him Yats. That was a short version of his name. She says, Yats is the guy. He's the guy. He's our guy. Fuck Europe. Fuck the EU. So she was like, just basically calling the shots of who was going to be in charge of Ukraine. Victoria Nuland is married to a guy named Robert Kagan. And Robert Kagan is a well-known neocon from way back. And he and his brother he and his brother and his wife, the four of them, they like this neocon crime family. And, there she is with a high level position in the United States government. And she is, really calling the shots on this, testifying to Congress. And, she's the one that was testifying to Congress about the Nord Stream pipeline getting blown up.
Wow. Just wow. This is like the way past the point of like, fool me twice, shame on me. This is like, fool me a bazillion times. I don't even know who to blame anymore.
The really sad thing too is when I think back to, I remember the end when the Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War came to an end. There was a lot of talk about a peace dividend. We never experienced a peace dividend. How much money have we sent to Ukraine?
Right.
And yet we have people here who, their homes are getting blown away because we keep having more and more tornadoes, all kinds of weather problems, not to mention the inflation and all kinds of other problems.
Right. Yep.
So,
exactly.
anyways.
But we keep wanting to bring freedom and democracy to other countries, because now we're dipping our toes in Taiwan. We're back in Africa again. So we're everywhere. And what's really funny too is like I'm starting to see all these politicians going to all these other countries saying we're going to be bringing you freedom and peace and happiness and all of that stuff. Knowing full well that these people in other countries knows the history of America. It's so weird to me that I'm just waiting to see more countries just say like a big F you to America. I'm done, and yep.
And it is happening. It is happening. There was when Kamala Harris went to Africa a couple weeks back. There was one of the politicians there really like slammed saying, we don't want these people who want to bring so-called democracy,
Right.
And meanwhile, China is actually going in and building roads. And, and the thing of it is it shouldn't be about, well, now we need to go in because China's going in. No, it should really be about, hey, we want to build a world that makes everybody better off.
Yep. And that's the problem with America is like, we're just now seeing in the news that Kamala's going to Africa and, Taiwan and stuff in like, we're only doing it and we're only showing it on the news and doing it now really like a lot more than normal is because all these other countries are starting to win and we're not wanting them to win because we want to be the winners. Like our ego has to be the winner in this. And I see the manipulation in the media and why people, like fall for it. I wish that there just can be this huge awakening of people seeing and researching and looking into like what is the real reason why we're doing all of this. It just, I that's the hard part for me to understand, is how people are so easily manipulated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is really, a lot of it isn't really about Russia. It's also about China, because what the neocon plan is to go into, to go into Russia, break it apart, make it, our own little, group of countries, and then basically, then we can take on China. But I mean, it's insane.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's continue watching. And Lula, you're making some good points, saying that they blocked peace in December 21 and April 2022, the same White House team from 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He also says Jake Sullivan also goes back to 2014.
Yep. With Newland, he was a Biden security advisor, and Vicky was foreign policy advisor.
Yep.
Ugh. Career politicians, these people, when you say that, our government is run by the deep state, like, they have names. These are these people, they're the ones that are literally running our country forever, while we have a new person every 4 to 8 years that pretends like, who's a nice, pretty face for our country. But once he gets into office, or whoever gets into the presidential office, usually answers and obides to these people.
Exactly. In a way they kind of have to, because it's such a huge, the government is so huge, and career people who work in the government, they keep the government functioning. It's just that they should have, the people should have, and the people in the government should have they should be, their purpose should not be their own personal agendas, like destroying Russia because, they have a family history of hatred of Russia.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Ukraine is not being helped at all by this. Ukraine's being destroyed by this proxy war. But have your governments call for immediate negotiations between the United States and Russia to stop a war that is endangering the entire planet. And it's obvious the first term of an agreement is Russia goes home and the United States stops NATO enlargement. This is the basis of peace, that Ukraine is neutral, and both sides of both these nuclear superpowers back off. Neither fills the vacuum of the other. Of course, there are specific issues inside that need now to be settled. We once had the Minsk II agreements, and they were aimed at settling peacefully the conflict in the Donbass. But we even heard from former Chancellor Merkel, we didn't really mean that. We weren't really going to guarantee that. That was bad faith. That was to give Ukraine time to arm. She actually said that a couple of weeks ago. We had agreement for peace, but was it a fake by the US and Ukraine and Germany to rearm? Or was it real? We need something real this time, not something fake. And similarly with Crimea. What Yanukovych was proposing was a long-term lease arrangement for Russia and Ukraine in Crimea, because after all, Russia's had its naval fleet in Sevastopol since 1783. And then every day now Zelensky says, we're going to chase them out of Crimea. Yeah, over all of our dead bodies. Let's stop this nonsense, this childishness.
Damn. So Russia has had their military operations in that part of that country since 1700s. And now Zelensky, this new little puppet guy for Ukraine, is going to kick them out of Crimea when they've been there for 300 goddamn years.
Yeah, and not only that, but the people of Crimea, they had a referendum, and they said they wanted to be with Russia. They identify as Russians.
Yeah,
they're very close to the eastern part of Ukraine, which is also ethnically Russian. Those people speak Russian.
Yeah. Yeah, I only found it on the Jimmy Dore show, but there was like an NBC coverage where like it was either ABC or NBC or MSNBC. Somebody went onto the grounds in Crimea and asked the people on the grounds to like in person, like people on the streets, who is your leader? And every single one of them said Putin. They said they were Russian in Crimea, like every one of them. But then you've got these people on Twitter and shit with the blue and yellow profile pictures saying that Crimea deserves to be with Ukraine. They're Ukrainians. We need to stand with them. Like, have you been on the ground of Crimea and asked these people yourselves? Have you been on the ground of Donbass? Have you been on these grounds and asked these people themselves? No. What you're doing is you're listening to the mainstream media news and what the government is telling you that they want you to believe.
Yeah.
There's proof. There's proof out there. Even the mainstream media went and asked the people and got fucked over themselves because they got proven wrong. And now you can't find that news article or news video anywhere except for on the Jimmy Dore show.
And now I'm sorry, I can't think of that guy's name. He was the Russian the Soviet Union leader during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Is it the guy with the birthmark?
Oh no, that's Gorbachev. It was Khrushchev. Okay. He was from Ukraine, and what happened was he basically gave Crimea to Ukraine during the time that he was the head of the Soviet Union. And so it wasn't even part of Ukraine until like the 1950s or 60s. So
yeah, there's still people alive there that were part of Russia when it was still, Russia or the USSR, and they believe that they're that. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. That absolutely makes sense. That's like giving, well, it's kind of like giving Hawaii to America almost a little over 50 years ago. Hawaiians still don't think they're really American. So yeah, no, it totally makes sense because, I swear people live nowadays thinking like colonization is over and done with and we don't do it anymore. And it's like, even if we don't realize what's going on in Ukraine and Iraq and Iran and, Yemen and Israel and all these other places, like just look, 70 years ago of what happened to Hawaii. We were doing that when cars were already invented. So.
Well, really what happened was the U.S., maybe Britain too, but particularly the U.S. has kind of developed its own unique form of colonization. And if you read the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman, he explains in that book what it's all about. And it's basically what we do is we lend people money through the World Bank and the IMF. We lend countries money through the World Bank and the IMF. And typically what has happened is if the leaders of the country don't want to borrow the money, they take them out. And he describes how he called himself an economic hitman. He was an economist that did consulting work. Ultimately, it was for the World Bank and the IMF, ultimately really the US government. And so he would go in and do economic analyses that would justify building a dam or something like that. And if the leaders of the country didn't want to borrow the money, they had their various ways of trying to persuade them. And then ultimately they would take them out if they didn't cooperate. But the purpose was to get these countries indebted to the United States so that we would then they would then do whatever we wanted them to, like install military bases and things like that, or we could dictate their foreign policy to them, whatever. And so some of these crises that have happened over the years in South America and other countries have come about because they borrowed money from us through the IMF. And then, if interest rates rose, like in the late 70s, early 80s, those people got screwed up. I mean, those countries got screwed over. So,
yep. Now they just call it businesses are investing in these countries, like how BlackRock is investing in Ukraine right now. You know, when these companies invest in countries, you know that country is going to be blown to smithereens in the next 10 years.
Yeah, when you have a company like BlackRock that is, bigger than I don't know how many countries, it has a greater wealth than
Yep.
than I don't know
$10
how
trillion.
many countries.
It's worth $10 trillion.
They
That's
don't
like,
need it. Yeah, they don't need the U.S. government anymore.
right? We could take his money, pay off our debt, and I'm pretty sure the politician would stop complaining about our debt crisis after that. Dog.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Ed Heller makes a very good point. And see, this is the thing. And we can talk about this a little bit later, but his point is that we have, because of all these because of the fighting that's going on, we have implemented sanctions against Russia, so they're not allowed to use the dollar. Okay. And that has been the international unit of exchange, currency of exchange. But what's happened is Russia is a huge exporter, and so they can still do business. They couldn't do it in dollars. So what's happening now is that the Russia is now getting together with India, they're getting together with China, and they're doing trade in other currencies. And so what that means then is it's basically undermining the system of the US dollar being the reserve currency. And so we've shot ourselves in the foot. It's just unbelievable.
Yep. You know what's crazy too, because you were saying about sanctions, it reminded me, I'm trying to look for it right now. I don't think I'm gonna be able to find it. But Marco Rubio was on mainstream media news talking about how that he was worried, and they're worried about how big China's getting and BRICS is getting, because if they join that, and if Saudi Arabia doesn't use the petrodollar as and the world currency isn't the US dollar anymore, that they can't sanction Russia anymore, and how like bad that is for Russia, like, or how bad it is for us that we can't sanction this country anymore. And it's Marco Rubio talking about it. I think Richard Medhurst brought it up or something like that. I'll finish watching this and then I'll look for the video so we can see it. But man, is it crazy how our thinking when it comes to sanctioning other countries is like supposedly good, but we're starving other countries literally.
Yeah, so really.
Okay.
The whole world's survival is at stake. And this rhetoric is so reckless of these leaders, these so-called leaders, these politicians, who think that with bravado, that they can say anything, but what they're doing is driving us closer to nuclear war. So we need compromises like the Minsk Agreement, like a long-term arrangement for Crimea, and especially for the two nuclear superpowers to back off and stop this reckless NATO enlargement, which was a lie from the beginning, a violation of agreements made to President Gorbachev all the way back in 1990, and hopelessly provocative and dangerous. And that is the key to getting a world back to some protection and some hope for survival. So thank you very much. We need your voices everywhere, in every country, for governments to stand up clearly at the United Nations and in every other forum to say, stop this war now, stop the escalation, stop the bravado, stop the hate talk, and sit down and negotiate a peace that respects the security interests of all of the parties, and stop the military expansion. This is the root of this war. Most of the world, and I should be more clear, most of the world's governments clearly want peace and are neutral in this conflict between the US and Russia. It's when this war, the war of 2022, exploded in February last year, the US and Europe said, okay, the whole world's aligned against Russian aggression. Well, actually, it wasn't like that. The vast majority of the world's government said, stop the fighting. We don't take sides. We don't join your sanctions. We don't view this as a one-sided affair. China, for example, very responsibly said, negotiate, but respect the security interests of all sides. What that meant was the NATO question. And around the world, most governments did not impose sanctions on Russia. They said, we want an end to the war. We are neither Russia haters nor Ukraine haters. We want the two sides to negotiate. So practically speaking, China, Brazil, India, South Africa, the so-called BRICS countries, together with Russia, those countries are major voices for peace and negotiation. And they should continue to say very clearly that their vision is not to side with one side or the other side, but to side with negotiation and peace. And India has a special role to play. Not only is it a great country and a civilization and 1.4 billion people, but it's the presidency of the G20 this year. And so India has plenty of opportunity to push hard for peace and negotiations. Brazil will host the G20 next year. President Lula is very clear that what is needed right now is not military victory on the battlefield. This is a reckless illusion. What is needed is negotiations and an end to the NATO enlargement. And Brazil will be president of the G20 next year. South Africa, which has said the same, will be president of the G20 in 2025. So I believe that these countries have a huge role to play. I think the African Union should make a strong statement that Africa is being endangered by this war. Africa views this war as a tragedy and an unnecessary one, and as a solvable one as well. So the African Union, I believe, should stand up and be clear. This is the time for peace and for negotiations. Turkey, in my mind, gets a special commendation because President Erdogan has worked very hard during the past year, and his very skillful foreign ministry has worked hard to try to mediate between the two sides. It's not easy to do, but of course, Turkey knows the Black Sea area very well indeed, and should be able to play a very important role. But I would say there's not a government in the world that can't contribute to the momentum of demand for negotiations by saying to the big powers, we do not agree with the approach of winning on the battlefield, because that endangers the whole world. Of course, first and foremost, Ukraine, but actually the entire world with nuclear war. And we demand, therefore, a negotiation now. How can they even think to send tanks right now without even mentioning the word negotiations? Shame on them, shame. This is definitely in part the corruption of our political processes. I can speak about the United States. The US is a government for hire. Our political system is organized around campaign contributions, where lobbyists and major campaign contributors spend billions of dollars, and by doing so, essentially buy the policies of the US government. And I have no doubt that the big campaign contributors have played a role in this war. And because what I can tell you is this is not a war that is popular among the US public, or these neocon ideas are not popular or not demanded by the public, even with all the propaganda we receive from the US government. The public is very skeptical. This is a policy in the US driven by a small group of people that have the hands-on levers of power. And so it is not democracy that has brought us to war. It is the corruption of our political institutions. I couldn't agree more. I think that is why our voices are so important, especially with the mainstream media unwilling, unable, I don't understand it, but absolutely not doing their job of holding government to account, but just the opposite, just becoming megaphones for government propaganda. The New York Times, the Washington Post, useless. All they do is report what senior officials say, even unnamed senior officials, as if these newspapers forgot what their role is in a democracy, which is to doubt the government, to probe, to investigate. They don't even do that anymore. It's pathetic. And so this is a very important reason for this call and for the peace movement to call out this small group that manipulates our governments and that in the end creates threats to all of humanity. On the Vatican plan, we had or not plan, I should say, but the meeting, we had a very good meeting. I can tell you the United States government and government of Ukraine and others were very unhappy in general about any calls for negotiations. This is incredible to me. They have a way of, we've gone a whole year without any negotiations. Shock, and especially we went a whole year without Biden speaking with Putin once. So this is what makes this difficult. The governments, I mean, these governments, these belligerents in the hands of these neocons don't want to talk, and they try to beat down anything we say, and the media beat down, the mainstream media beat down the message, though the message is getting through more and more because it's the official narratives are so phony and so much propaganda that more and more channels are finding ways to see the truth. And I think that that's an important development. So I'm trying to think of every way to amplify what we're saying and doing, and I'm open to all suggestions. We need public meetings. We need online meetings. We need leaders that are ready to go against the official narratives, to be speaking out. There have been a number of generals in Germany recently who have said how reckless all of this is and how phony it is and how dangerous it is for Ukraine. And that's very important to hear more of those voices. The government of Mexico, I know, has been pursuing the idea of a peace commission and high-level peace. And I think being very practical right now of not only peace in principle or in general, but peace in Ukraine would be very helpful and timely. And if AMLO, the president of Mexico, and President Lula, for example, within the Americas work together, there are many other like-minded leaders in the Americas. And the Americas, the countries of Latin America, could speak out very, very clearly. It would put the U.S., it would force the U.S. to listen. This is important. The neocons get away with it if they dominate the narrative. But if other governments are saying, no, that is dangerous, that's wrong, then they can't dominate the narrative. And so this is why it's so important for governments like Mexico, which is also a member of the G20, to speak out clearly. And for like-minded countries that are not, and let me put it this way, not part of the U.S. alliance, and that means that outside of NATO, outside of the U.S. military alliance in Asia, the rest of the world, that's the vast majority of countries, those countries have to say, we are on neither side, we are for peace, and to be very clear about that.
That's so good.
Yeah. Alana X asked the question of, is this the video he put out, Jeffrey Sachs put out today? No, he put it out a couple of days ago, but he's been putting out a lot of videos. And, I highly recommend going to his YouTube page. So,
Yep. Yeah, this was posted 4 days ago. Okay, so this is the video I found it of Marco Rubio talking about sanctioning Russia. So this was crazy. So this is how our own politicians think about U.S. hegemony, I guess, imperialism.
Sanction currencies other than the dollar, that we won't have the ability to sanction them. As we are sitting here, focused on some of these nuttiness that's going on, you have people that are basically dedicating their lives in this country to ensuring that it is legal to mutilate children, to do drag shows in schools. They dedicate their lives to this. And we have another superpower that basically wants to become the world's dominant power at our expense. And these people don't want to focus on it.
No. China is not seeking to become the dominant power. You view it like that because you have an inferiority complex. That's what it is. Not him. I'm not. Maybe some people.
This guy's super funny about it. I think he puts. But yeah, did you hear how Marco Rubio talked here? I think he plays it the rest of it all the way through right here.
A nice multipolar world. But we have people in Congress, right where Mr. Rubio is standing, who hate that idea because they want to stay in control.
There, we had some person on The View yesterday say that our criminal justice system is no better than what China is doing with its genocide of Uyghur Muslims. So we better wake up.
Okay, I don't know what this again has to do with alternate currencies, but since when do you care about Muslims? The building that you're fucking standing in has sanctioned the genocide. I mean, you could call it a genocide. You really could, given the numbers of Arabs and Muslims. Man, come on.
Right. Yeah. No, he's totally correct. So yeah, the whole Marco Rubio talking about how if BRICS becomes big, we can't sanction Russia.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
that we won't have the ability to sanction them. As we are sitting here.
Like we won't have the ability to say, how fucking dare you? That's Marco Rubio, one of the more famous politicians. So if he's out there on Fox News talking about that like it's a normal ass thing, what are all the rest of them talking about? Sanctions with other countries. And sanctions, most people, when they hear sanctions, they don't even understand what the word sanctions means. They probably think it's the same word as subsidies, because it all starts with an S or something. I have no idea. Most people don't even know what sanctions are, but it's literally starving these people in these countries. You're taking away from the leader being able to provide for their country. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's like having somebody in jail and then not giving them their 3 meals a day because you want them to start squealing on whoever you want them to rat on.
Yeah. And ultimately his objective is we want to be able to stay in power. We want to be able to keep ourselves the number one country, the hegemonic power forever and a day. You know, we, the United States, have we're entitled to always be the most powerful, richest country in the whole world, telling everybody else what to do.
Yep. I think there was just like this small little time in American history where the world looked at us as the good guys, like, you know, the cowboy heroes or something. And we've just kept that facade for so long that we've become corrupt, but still with that facade. It's like the cigarette commercials where you know that shit's going to kill you, but that cowboy looks good smoking that cigarette on that horse.
Yeah. I think people, you know, just talking with friends and stuff, there really still seems to be this perception of, you know, like it's still, you know, the 1960s or something. The concern about Putin has been, oh, Putin is gonna, you know, what happens if we don't stop him in Ukraine? He's gonna go in and he's gonna take over the rest of Europe. Like he's Hitler.
Like for Germany or something.
Yeah. Putin isn't Hitler. Only Hitler was Hitler. You know?
But right along though is that while America is literally doing that with NATO, just we get a new person in the head of office every 4 years, 4 to 8 years.
Yeah. And you know, this dovetails back to the video with Dennis Kucinich, because he was talking about how horrible our media is, and you know, about the corruption. This stuff all dovetails back to how corrupt our system is because of our campaign finance system.
Yep. All right. So, what is the American Economic Review that you had sent me today?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you had you had the gentleman who was talking about the protests that they're going to have in New York City, in Queens, for the health care.
Scott Desnoyers. Yeah,
Scott. I'm sorry, and I don't know why. I guess I'm not feeling well. I keep blanking on everything today.
It's Friday. It's the start of the weekend.
Anyway, yeah. So Scott, Scott was talking about healthcare the other on your show the other day, and I wanted to just bring up from an economics perspective, you know, why our healthcare system is so problematic. He's worked with Dr. Jarvis, who, you know, he talked about, Dr. Jarvis has talked about the economics of healthcare. And, you know, we have this idea that we have this free market system in the US. And, you know, and so that's part of the rationale that we have supposedly have this best healthcare system, which of course, you know, is very questionable. You know, but the article that I sent you was an article that was written by a guy named Kenneth Arrow, who was one of the top economists of the 20th century. And that man was, he was highly respected. He wrote this article that basically created the whole field of healthcare economics. And what he said in that article, usually that's behind a paywall, but I was able to find, I think it was an article. The article was from Stanford, or I mean, the copy was from Stanford or something. So we were able to get it. You know, he basically says, he goes through it and talks about the characteristics of the healthcare industry, and how basically it doesn't fit any of the descriptions of a competitive market. So basically, a competitive market, you know, we define it as economists in certain ways. One of the things is we have a large number of consumers and suppliers, and we also define it as having, having a fully informed consumers. Let's see, and we also look at it as being, if you consume something, it doesn't have an effect on somebody else. It's, so it's just an individual thing. So there's all these there's this definition of what a competitive economy is, or competitive market. But when you actually look at the healthcare market, it doesn't fit any of the criteria, For one thing, we don't really buy healthcare. What we do is we buy insurance. So we're not really buying a commodity. We're not buying a product. What we're doing is we're basically purchasing a type of insurance. And so you can't look at it in the same way as if you were going out and buying groceries or something. But healthcare insurance companies are also, they're highly concentrated. So we have monopolies in them. And then also healthcare is not something that you can have a fully informed populace, a fully informed consumers, because you go to a doctor and part of what you're paying for is their medical expertise. And so you don't really know the quality. You don't necessarily know, at least at first, what the quality of the care that you're getting. And you also, when you're buying the insurance, you don't always know what you're buying there, because there can be a lot of things that you don't realize aren't really covered, even though you have a policy and everything. There's a lot of interpretation, and so anyway,
right. Well, it doesn't help either that the medical sphere has gotten more into the reactionary medicine instead of preventative care. So that's been a big problem too, is it's more of a reactionary thing than preventing it from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
And most of the times, it's their buddies in the food industry that causes these health problems for people, or, most of the time, sometimes a lot of the times it's health, it's food things, and those are their buddies. And so their buddies cause the health problems and then they react to it. So,
yeah. And another thing about healthcare is there's something called externalities, which is basically, it means you do something in an economic sense and it affects other people, not just you. So if I go to a grocery store and I buy a bag of potato chips and I come home and I eat it, well, I'm the one that's gonna, suffer the consequences.
Right.
But the reality is many things, in fact, have effects on other people. And healthcare is one of those things. I mean, that's part of what the rationale for having broad scale vaccination. And I'm not trying to get into the COVID discussion or anything like that. I'm just talking about polio, for instance. We were able to, get rid of that because so many people were vaccinated for polio. So what it did was every additional person that gets a vaccination is, less. It is one less person that can maybe cause some kind of contagion. Well, I don't know if it works exactly like that, but
one less person in an iron lung for sure.
Yeah, but for infectious diseases like measles and things, those things are highly contagious. So if a person has a vaccine for measles, they're not going to spread it to other people.
Right.
And so for public health purposes, when we don't have health care, there's a lot of people. I mean, nowadays we have a lot of people who are homeless. They're going to be prone to, getting sick all types of things. You know, the thing is, when we care for other people, when we care for the most vulnerable, that also protects us. And, you know, so that I'm not saying this as I'm not saying this in order to say we should all get vaccinations for everything. The point isn't the vaccination. The point is that public health is a matter for all of us. And so when people are protected, when even the homeless people, who are unable to get care otherwise, if they can get care, that makes our society healthier. And it's
I know
better
I'm getting so tired of getting mad at my kid for getting hurt and going to the hospital. I'm like, God damn it, child. Every time a couple of years goes by and I'm like, all right, they don't care about the bill anymore. You send me back to the hospital again.
But and then another thing is there's so much monopolization that's going on. And hospitals have been monopolized, or they're taken over by private equity. And so there's just many facets of the what we consider a competitive market that just do not apply at all to any kind of a healthcare system. And so that's what that article is about. And the thing is that the point is to help educate people so that they don't have to accept the arguments that, oh, we have a free market system, and so we have this great this great healthcare system. The healthcare is not something that functions well in a free market. Absolutely not. And we shouldn't even be considering it. It should be primarily something that is publicly funded and basically part of our lives, part of everybody's life. So anyway, sorry.
anything that benefits human society, a human being that makes them healthy to be able to live long and healthy life with no problems whatsoever should not have profit tied to it at all. Period.
Right. Yeah, it's totally it's totally warped incentives. Totally. And how people can be okay with having people, like CEOs making millions of dollars. I mean, that's money that's taken away from the premiums that are paid by average people, and enriching these executives. It's just really unconscionable. It really is.
So tell me about the American Economic Review.
Well, the American Economic Review is like the leading economic journal for economists in the United States. So it is sort of like, let's see, it would be like the Lancet for British medicine, that kind of thing. Or, the American Economics Association is a publication of the American Economics Association, which is the leading association of economists of all types. So, so it covers all specialties and everything. So,
Okay, cool. I will put it into the link for it into the comments section right now, and then we'll cover one more thing, and then we can get out of here since we're already talking. Well, I guess it's part of it talking about the crappiness of the mainstream media, how they manipulate us and use propaganda against us. This just happened actually recently on, I don't know what channel it was, MSNBC. Okay, so finally MSNBC invited Matt Taibbi on to talk about the Twitter files. And MSNBC is very left-leaning, Democratic kind of people. So, obviously those are the people that are against the release of the Twitter files right now. So, this just goes to show that real journalists are actually out there doing things that people should be doing. I mean, we talked about this yesterday with Julian Assange, with Misty yesterday too. Real journalists are out there doing the good deeds, the things that need to be done. And then you've got just these like accredited mainstream media lops that just throw these people down into the dirt and make them feel shitty for like what we're about to see. Just in this example alone, a couple of errors, tweet errors, word errors, semantics pretty much is what it is. And these guys think that they've got these gotcha moments on these real journalists, just kind of like, like the government right now, like, haha, Julian Assange, you're, in jail right now. So gotcha. Like, you're ruining a human life. And there was more people in WikiLeaks than Julian Assange. And Washington, I think the Wall Street Journal posted it as well. Anyway, I just wanted to show this one last thing of, how crappy even the mainstream media has gotten to be when it comes to people who do real journalism. I mean, we could definitely see with the whole Cy Hirsch thing with the Nord Stream pipeline and all of that, but this is just another example of what it is. So Matt Taibbi went on to the Mehdi Hasan show. I don't know who Mehdi Hasan is. Obviously, he's a Democrat if he's on MSNBC. And Mehdi Hasan thinks that he's just got these awesome gotcha moments against him. And we're going to see 3 examples of the semantic fighting and how this guy, Mehdi Hasan, thinks that he's just better than Matt Taibbi because of a couple of grammatical errors.
You talk a lot about the Election Integrity Project in the Twitter files, which Stanford and the University of Washington founded to monitor attacks on our elections. And you say some stuff about them that a lot of your critics say is not true, and that affects your credibility. You said the EIP was founded in response to the government dropping its proposal for a disinformation governance. Well, there you are. We're quoting you on screen. It wasn't. It was formed 2 years earlier. You suggest it was government funded, even though during the 2020 election that you're covering, it wasn't. You say they labeled 22 million tweets as misinformation in the run-up to the 2020 vote. They didn't. They flagged 3,000 election misinformation tweets for labeling, so you were only 21,997,000 off. And you also claim the EIP was, let me finish the question, you can come back in. You also claim the EIP was partnered with the government Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, CISA, to censor Twitter, but you mix up CISA, CISA, a Homeland Security Agency, with the Center for Internet Security, the CIS, which is a non-profit. In fact, you added an A to CIS. I think people can see it there in brackets to make that false claim. It's just error after error, Matt, on just this one topic.
Error. But the other ones aren't. The 22 million number came from their own report?
Yeah, where did it came from a report in March? Do you know what the 22 million number is, Matt? Can you tell me? Because we checked. 22 million is the number of tweets about election misinformation that they just mapped. How many tweets were they? The ones they actually flagged to Twitter before the election, 22 million came after the election. It wasn't in the run-up. They flagged 3,000. So you were off by 21,997,000. It's another error.
They've said a lot of things. I stand by my story.
You stand by what story? You stand by 22 million were flagged in the run-up to the election, even though that number came in March 2021, which was after the election.
No, this came in their report after the election.
Which was about some total of tweets that they counted on the election. What they flagged to Twitter was 2,980 tweets, I believe. So that's nowhere near 22 million. Come on, what? You got something wrong. You got CISA wrong. Why did you add A? Okay, Matt, why did you add A in square brackets? Do you understand why people worry about?
I actually thought that.
And why didn't you fix it? I just checked the tweet before I came on air. It's been 3 weeks since.
Like MSNBC expects journalists and everybody to know what all these alphabet, companies stand for and what they all are. Like, I mess up those things all the goddamn time. There's so many of them. How? The arrogance, right, of Hasan.
Yeah, really.
It's crazy to me. Like this whole, you finally get brought on to MSNBC to talk about the Twitter files, and this is what they want to talk about: 3 errors of a tweet that you made.
Do you not have any?
In a tweet, like people don't mess up in tweets all the time.
All the time. Yes. I tell people all the time that my phone hates me because it puts wrong things in there. Every time I want to throw an I somewhere, it throws the number 8, or when I want to use the letter O, it throws the number 9 up there. Like on is 9 N on for me. That's what phones do. Like, come on, this guy is just. And he might have thought, like I said, there's so many alphabet companies with all these like letters and names and symbols and all this other stuff. Like, you're really gonna mess with him because he did CISA instead of CIS. Like it's that big of a you've lost credibility now because you've added an A there. The way that they treat him is just disgusting to me. It's wild.
No.
While, Fox News is actually giving him, talking points and letting him speak and stuff. It's crazy.
Okay, and what about the date?
Go ahead.
Did you see the testimony they gave to Congress?
Yep, calling him a so-called journalist.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah, with the cherry-picked bullshit. Like, that bitch, yeah, she had to step down from the DNC in shame because somebody leaked stuff about her, and she's gonna sit there and call him a journalist because he helped release the Twitter files. Like, he's a journalist just as much as that guy's a journalist that made you shamefully step down from the DNC, bitch. I didn't even know she was still in office. I am so mad.
I know. I didn't realize she was still in office either. I was hoping eventually somebody would take her out, put us out of misery of having her. And and then the way she came after him, like, he made all kinds of money off of it or something. I mean, this woman she takes money from like payday lenders.
Right. But this guy's a journalist. How is he supposed to live? Like, him releasing these files as a journalist is his job. It's what he's supposed to be doing. How are you going to sit there and get mad at him for making money off of something that's his goddamn job?
I mean, the thing of it is like, no wonder Elon Musk, asked him to do it. Right. These other people are just incompetent. They're just not competent to do something like this. It's just incredible. And so, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, like, somebody reviewing a paper and they don't know what the paper says. So what they do is they focus on the spelling. I mean, that's kind of the equivalent of it,
Right. Absolutely. I agree. No, that totally makes sense.
You got the date wrong when it was founded. You said it was founded in response to the Disinformation Board. That was last year.
Well, because Stamos is saying in the video that we were sort of created to fill the gaps.
But no, that's not what you say in the tweet. That's not what you say in the tweet.
The SIO was created in 2018.
No. You say, this is what you say, that the EIP was created after the public uproar paused the Disinformation Board. That's wrong. You need to correct that as well, don't you?
After the
that's what your words. You say, to quote you, after public uproar paused the Orwellian Disinformation Governance Board, Stanford created the EIP. That's wrong.
Well, that's what they say.
You don't need sources, Matt. You could check the EIP website. It says it was created in 2020.
Well, that's the date that I just said.
And the Disinformation Board was 2022.
Okay. All right. Well, then that is an error.
Like, ooh, now Hassan's going around saying gotcha everywhere because of that. He was, what, 2 years off on something that he mistook, that he could correct the error, which he did correct. He did delete those tweets and correct the error. And Hassan is still all over Twitter last night. Like, he corrected the errors. You can't trust him anymore. It's crazy to me.
How helpful is that to people? As a news person, you're supposed to be informing the the people that are who watch you or read your material. This kind of stuff informs nobody. All it does is just makes well, for one thing, I find it really actually very boring. It's really childish, and it provides no information whatsoever except that, okay, Matt Taibbi screwed up on some tweets. So what?
Right. Yep. But he makes such a big hoopla about it, like so big last night. It was just, he was nonstop. And I love like a couple of people like this person, Jeffrey Hamilton, said, you after finding a non-consequential error so you can divert from the actual issue at hand. Like this is just, right,
That's
Lana.
not
He spelled something wrong, therefore the entire Twitter file is false. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty much what they're saying.
Exactly.
Ugh.
And this is, just a completely typical tactic that they
Right.
use, to divert people, to
Yep.
divert attention. And, it's done so often that now people repeat this kind of stuff too all the time,
Right. Yeah, how many people last night on Twitter with blue and yellow flags on their profile pictures went around and said, "Go Hassan, you got him, gotcha, boom, mic drop," Like how many of those people? I bet a lot, because it's so crazy to me how they think that that's it. Like he got him there. Like you guys don't even know what the Twitter files are about. Betcha $100 you don't even know what the Twitter files are about.
God, what a professional claim to fame. He got Matt Taibbi on some tweets.
Right, on some semantics. It's absolutely crazy. All right. I know you don't have a thing, so where can people find you?
Actually, I am now on Facebook, believe it or not. Yeah, so you can get back to me on Facebook or Messenger. So yeah.
I heard you have 2 Facebooks.
Oh yeah.
How do you people get people to hack you? How do you get people to hack you though? Like I've never had somebody make an extra, like a spare account with my information. I've never had that happen to me. I don't know how you guys have it happen to you.
I don't know how it happens. So yeah, I don't know either, but there seems to be a rash of that because I've been getting friend requests and stuff for people that I have no idea who they are. And there's like no information, about them. So when you click on it, it provides no information about who they are. No,
that's when I hit the decline button. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems to, I don't really understand what the purpose of it is. I guess probably they are able to catfish some people.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah.
I just want to know what kind of importance status I have to get to be able to get myself in like somebody making a fake account of me. Like what level do I need to be on with you, Sherry, to have somebody do that? Okay.
Well, I'm certainly not important. That's for sure.
Well, you see, because I'm I'm a millennial, so I kind of grew up with like a little bit of the internet. But usually when people make like fake accounts, it's usually like a famous people or something. They're trying to be this famous person. So that's why I'm like, I saw you got hacked this week, and also Bonnie got hacked this week as well. She had an account made, Mrs. Firestone. Yeah, she got one as well. So I got friends request from you and an extra one from her as well. And I'm like, it's got to be like they're like up there in The Economist or something that people are like making fake accounts because they're up there. Like you guys are all famous.
Yeah,
It's so
because
cool.
economists are so important to the world.
That's right. Lana says she's gonna make a Jimmy Nose Hair account. Now you're gonna get me all worried. Do I have nose hair like a dude?
I couldn't
start
see
picking
one.
my nose on screen now. Y'all get me all nervous. Jimmy Nose Hair. Okay, so you are back on Facebook though. That's good to hear.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So you guys can all find her on Facebook. She is Sherry Wise here. Hold on, let me put that down so you guys can see the little name thingies. So Sherry Wise on Facebook if you want to follow her. What is going on with us today? Don't forget, Chicago Coroner is going to be on at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern, over on their YouTube channel, Chicago Coroner. They recently, or I think they recently just bought Chicago Coroner itself. So now Jerry and Ed Heller, E. Heller, who you see in the comment section, now own Chicago Coroner, and it is theirs. It's their show now. So super exciting for them. We want to give them all the support that we can. They are fellow friends of us, and I absolutely adore them. They're all about supporting the little people, and I really appreciate them for that. So they will be on today, like I said, at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. And then tomorrow, I believe Willie has something cooking up in the back room in StreamYard for tomorrow here at KRTD for his show. So sometime tomorrow, keep an eye out at KRTD for Willie's show. Tomorrow night at midnight Eastern, 9 Pacific is the Secret Show with me and Warren. I don't know what we have planned for tomorrow yet. I've been trying to find funny stuff and things to show on the show. So that's going to be my homework today and tomorrow, is to try to find stuff for tomorrow. Then Sunday, I will be on the Willie Bragg Show on his own channel. I think that's going to be around 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, and that will be on Sunday. And then I will be back again for another week. Y'all just can't get rid of me. You're stuck with my fucking face. I can come on with a mask if y'all get tired. And I also have an app called Animes, which turns me into like an entire cartoon person. If y'all get tired of my face, just let me know that you're sick of my face, and I'll throw that up there as like a little breaker, because I get tired of my face sometimes too. So it just let me know in the next, week and a half. Y'all get tired of me, I'll throw some, things up there to keep y'all entertained, so you don't have to look at my face all the time. My nose follicles are unseen. Yes. Okay, good.
And there's also the protest on Sunday for healthcare.
Yes.
Scott Noyers.
Yep. So the events list we have is this Sunday is the Scott Desnoyers Healthcare for All event down in New York, I believe is where they're going to do it. Is it in New York? I believe so.
Yeah, it was in Queens. Mm-hmm.
Queens. Okay. And then on Tuesday, April 11th is the 1-year anniversary of Julian Assange being locked up in jail. So Misty is holding an event rally in DC for that on Tuesday. They've got some speakers and stuff like that, a free Julian Assange event as well. So we're definitely going to keep an eye on that. If you guys can't make it, I know that Roar Media is going to be covering it on their YouTube channel on Tuesday for that. And I believe we are going to be covering the event on Sunday for the Scott Desnoyers thing.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that we're going to be covering that. And then look, I'm making the graphics and all that stuff now. Keep an eye out for the end of this month. I know we're going to be doing a 420 live stream. And then we're going to be doing a Labor Day live stream, right? Is it a Labor? Are we doing a Labor Day? What comes after?
It was May Day.
May Day, that's right. Oh no, Earth Day too, April 22nd. So yeah, Earth Day and then May Day as well. We're going to be doing live streams for those. We're trying to figure out what we're going to be doing for that, what we're going to be covering, the kind of people that we're going to bring on to talk about. So keep your eye out on that. I'm just starting to make the graphics for it. So we're just getting it started. Just keep an eye out for it. All coming up at the end of this month. We got a lot of stuff coming up. So exciting stuff. I'm excited. Okay. Anyway, all right. Let me get out of here, you guys. I will see you all tomorrow, and I will see you all today later on at the Chicago Corner Chat Hangout area, and tomorrow on Warren Stream. Okay. Yeah. Let me get out of here before I start talking again too much. All right. Love you all. Peace. See y'all later. Bye.